Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sonic Chronicle. My name is Owen, and today, again, I'm casually in conversation. Today I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Zach Mulcahy, but you might have heard of him or you might know him as Big Yellow Jacket. Zach is someone who I have known for a number of years now online, who has been making a variety of different styles of music, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to discuss, I suppose, the difference in terms of his production, in terms of the old kind of acoustic, folksy kind of stuff that he used to do, and now I suppose the more electronic approach that he has taken in terms of his music production. I thought that there was like a really interesting kind of dichotomy there between those two styles that was really worth digging into and understanding a little bit more. Zach is also one of the loveliest men in music, very quiet, very soft-spoken, but seems to really make interesting big floor fillers, I suppose, in terms of music. Like, if you haven't heard Silhouette, which you will, over the course of this interview, I will cut in some of that tune in there. I would recommend you go and seek that out, because that is quite a good song. I think it's a really good one. With that said, let's jump into the interview. And make sure to check out Big Yellow Jacket using the links in the description. Overall, I hope you just really enjoy this conversation. And if you learn something from it, that's wonderful. Please leave me some comments in the comment section to let me know. For now, though, just enjoy this interview, and yeah, we'll speak soon. Thanks very much for taking some time out of your evening, Zach, to have a chat with me. Do you mind if I call you Zach, or would you prefer Mr. Jacket? Or
No, you're allowed to call me Zach. We know each other long enough, I suppose.
That's cool. That's cool. So, can you tell people a little bit about yourself? Just for people who might not be aware of who you are and what you currently do. And we'll kind of talk about the history of your music and things that you've done before as we kind of go through the conversation. But yeah, just where you are now, I suppose.
Okay, so my name is Zach Mulcahy, I suppose. I go by Big Yellow Jacket as an artist name. I'm a bedroom producer, I suppose I would call myself.
Hmm.
And so I've been making music for a while. And just it's been obviously with the history of music, you'll see that it's evolved from kind of humble beginnings to kind of more synthy, dancey kind of music at the moment.
Hmm.
And it's ever evolving, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that evolution is kind of where the real interest and I suppose will come from, right? In terms of what you do, right? Because when we first started talking a number of years ago now on Twitter, when it was called Twitter, and I'll be dead in the ground before I start calling it X. But when we first started talking, you were, I suppose, something similar to myself, like a singer songwriter, doing mostly acoustic music. Not necessarily ballady stuff all the time, right? But you were definitely kind of experimenting with like piano and guitar, and that was kind of where you were. But since then, obviously you've gone on to do much more, right? In terms of and push the boundaries a little bit more, right? In terms of what you do in terms of music, and you've transformed yourself into Big Yellow Jacket. Right?
Yeah.
Where did the name Big Yellow Jacket come from?
Um, I actually do own a big yellow jacket. It's
I have seen
downstairs.
it. It's great. Yeah, yeah,
I was like, oh, I was walking in the pubs and people were like, oh, I recognize you by the big yellow jacket you have on. I was like, oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, people are just going to recognize me by it. I might as well just use the name.
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. Because when we first started talking, I had a pseudonym myself. I was Grace, which is an old college nickname of mine, right? So I kind of tried to use that as a bit of a stage name. And then over time, I kind of just kind of fell back into like my own name, and I was like, listen, you know, Grayson is kind of who I was when I was going out on nights out and stuff like that, right? And it was kind of like this weird dichotomy, right? Of like, Owen was the guy who you talk to on a day-to-day basis, but when I was going out, I was Grayson because I was going party, right?
Yeah. The
So
persona.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I kind of realized that like, listen, if I'm going to be my authentic self and I'm going to be honest about my music, then I may as well just use my real name as well. So that's what I did. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, the difference between Big Yellow Jacket and Mulcahy, which was your pseudonym, before Big Yellow Jacket is BYJ. Is that like a new project? And would you consider continuing with Mulcahy as like a different pseudonym and like continue to make music with that as a different style? Or is Big Yellow Jacket just the thing now? Is this just you?
It's a good question. I suppose I've never really thought about it. I suppose when I started making music as Mulcahy, I kind of wasn't the most comfortable kind of using my own name as kind of my artist name. I don't really know why. Just kind of felt like I needed to have kind of the separation of the two between normal life and music life. And so when I did go to Big Yellow Jacket, it kind of felt a little bit freer, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't really kind of like a new project or anything like that. It was just kind of wanting to be, as you said yourself, like an authentic self.
Yeah.
And I felt in music that this kind of was my authentic self within it. And
yeah. I think that's an interesting difference, that like when I wanted to be my authentic self, I was like, listen, I'm going to own this and I'm going to be myself and this is who I am. But for you to be your authentic self, you felt like you had to hide your name. Right? It's an interesting difference, right? Because you can nearly be yourself a little bit more with people you don't know, right? In some ways compared to people that you like interact with on a daily basis, right? Because I'm never going to see this person again. I'm going to be myself, right? I'm going to be who I am, right? But if it's someone that you see on a daily basis, sometimes you have to put up these walls and put on these personas and just be like, I'm going to go along with this to kind of get through the day, so it's interesting that you've kind of done that. But yeah, I've the reason I ask about whether it'll be a different project to Mulcahy is because I love what you did as Mulcahy, and it's not to say that I don't enjoy what you do as Big Yellow Jacket as well, but it's so different, right?
Yeah.
And I've listened to a lot of the Big Yellow Jacket stuff over the past week or so to kind of get a sense of it and like a feel of it, and I suppose revisiting a lot of it, in preparation for this conversation. But it's so different, right? Especially when you compare it to songs like Dear Anna, right? And Listen, right? Very, very different songs. But you can also hear it creep in, right? The closer that you get towards the end of the Mulcahy era, right? Is what I might call it, right? On songs like Breathe, there are shades of Big Yellow Jacket there when it kind of comes in like the synthy stuff, the big airy kind of things that kind of come into play there. So can I ask you why the big change, right? Was it just that singer-songwriter stuff didn't do it for you much anymore? Or was it that had run its course and this was something that new that you wanted to try?
I suppose just two avenues I can answer this with. So technically I wasn't the greatest using Ableton or anything like that at the time of Mulcahy. And I was a big Bon Iver's fan, like the For Emma Forever Ago.
It's a great record.
And Fionn Regan. So I was kind of in that moment of time. I just loved playing guitar stuff, kind of making that kind of music. And then I started to learn a bit more production wise. And I saw how much I could possibly do. So I kept trying to expand the music from there. And then I suppose between the last Mulcahy song and the first Big Yellow Jacket song, I had done an Ableton production course run by a YouTube producer, Rachel K. Collier.
Okay.
It was a fantastic course, and I'd learned so much on it, and I just decided like this is probably the direction I want to go, because I want my music to be expansive. I want it to be adventurous, and I love folk music, but I also want to kind of push my boundaries and push my limits as a musician.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are, in a lot of ways, only so many things that you can do in terms of folk, right? Like there are artists out there that are kind of continuing along that vein, and I've spoken to a number of them relatively recently about folk, right? And like if you look at people like Emma Langford, who's doing her thing, and she's a wonderful artist, wonderful singer, and you've got lads coming up like Dara O'D in Tuam, who's doing wonderful work around folk as well, really kind of bearing themselves open right around that. But it's not necessarily about the music, I suppose. It's more about them telling stories, I suppose, more than anything else, right? And I suppose would you see yourself as doing both as well, right? Kind of expanding your musical horizons in addition to like continuing to tell your own stories.
Yeah, like I try in each song to kind of try to tell somewhat of a story.
Mm,
Obviously the format in writing for the lyrics is a little bit different when you go kind of move into a pop era
yeah.
or pop music.
Mm,
Um, you're not going to be able to expand on your ideas as much as you could in folk music.
yeah.
And so the song ideas and the song kind of the message kind of gets shorter and it kind of just becomes more of an idea than a story, I suppose.
Yeah. Like I suppose variety on a theme, I suppose, or kind of
Yeah.
like continuing like that thematic approach over the course of the song in general, without expanding on it, as you say. So are Bon Iver and or Bon Iver or whatever you want to call them, are they the primary kind of electronic influence then? Even though he does an awful lot of like a blending of the two, right, between electronic
Yeah.
and acoustic playing.
Um, yeah, he was definitely he was definitely the catalyst in the change.
Mm,
I think it was the 22 a million album was
okay.
that. And then as I've gone on, it's kind of each influence has changed. So it's gone from say Bon Iver to Glass Animals to
Okay.
Fred again at this stage, Tame Impala,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The Blaze, a French DJ duo.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of them.
Um, yeah, they're very good.
But yeah, I mean, French DJ duo. I mean, obviously, evokes imagery of Daft Punk, right? So if they're
Yeah,
anything like Daft Punk, I'll probably be a fan.
yeah.
Um.
Probably a little bit stranger than Daft Punk, I would say.
Oh,
Well
fair
worth a
enough.
listen.
Yeah, because like when you talk about Stranger, I like bands like the Amplifettes. Have you heard of them? They're
No.
an electronic band as well. And the Knife are quite popular as well. The Knife, um, they did that song by Jose Gonzalez. He covered it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
That's their version of that song is in my Spotify kind of plays.
it's a great song.
Oh, I
Great
love it.
record. Great song. But they did the original, and Jose Gonzalez covered it. So
Yeah. And it's such a funny turnaround for a cover because you hear the original and then you're kind of like, oh, this
yeah,
is great. And then you hear his one, you're like, where did he come from? Or where did
yeah,
he get how did he get the idea to do that?
yeah. It is a weird one. Because like the finger picking is really intricate as well, and
Yeah.
like the tuning is really weird as well on that one, if I recall. Because I remember looking it up years ago, trying to figure out how how to play it, and I couldn't be bothered trying to
Yeah.
tune differently. To be honest with you, my ear wasn't good enough at that point to tune differently and to tune back. So I just kind of left it off. So yeah. Um, but if we come back to talking about the production
Mm.
elements, is that, I suppose, the new, I suppose, direction in general, right? Is that the focus, right? Production rather than songwriting. Um, like, is this a way for you to put your music out there, or is this something that you want to do to work with other people?
Um, suppose a little bit of both. I want with I think rather than sacrificing kind of one for another, I think the song production or song
Mm,
crafting has gone kind of in a different direction. So I'm using more sounds to kind of get across ideas as well, along with the lyrics.
mm,
With that, and then I'm not really looking at kind of producing for people or anything like that. It's still kind of something I like to do myself. And then if I want, like, is say I redo say listen and I make it a kind of a different version.
yeah,
And the person I am now is different than the person who sang listen in the first place. So I don't think I'd be able to sing that anymore. So I'd have to bring in someone to collaborate with me.
right, gotcha.
So it'd be kind of just one of those kind of things. I'd love to bring people in and work with them.
Mm,
But it'd be more so on one of my projects
yeah, gotcha.
rather than kind of producing for others.
Because that's what I was going to ask you about. Fly Away, with Lauren, I believe her name
Yeah.
was. And also, I wanted to ask you something. Did she do the backing vocals on Dirana?
She did, yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I thought that I listened to Fly Away, and then I went back and listened to Dear Anna again, and I was like, is that the same person? So I just wanted to ask you that. But yeah, Fly Away is an interesting one. The beat is great. The beat is so tribal sounding.
Sorry, this is Kevin.
Oh, look at Kevin. Oh, wow. Hey, Kevin. How's it going, pal? Anyway, sorry, Fly Away.
Yes.
So the vocal line I thought was very similar to, and maybe this is Lauren's vocal as well, but it seemed quite similar to Elastic Heart by Sia in a lot of ways. If you don't recognize it, that's great, right? Because it just means that you came up with like a really nice hook, right? In the same way. Did you do some backing vocals on that track as well?
I the whole song was actually Lauren's song.
Right. Okay.
So we kind of she came with kind of the melody and the lyrics, and we just kind of refined those together. And I built the song around her lyrics and her melody.
Gotcha.
And yeah,
that's a really good song. I really like the themes in it. It's a good pop song. It's really well put together. And that was what I was going to ask you. Like, was this a song that was brought to you for you to produce, right? And obviously, you mentioned that was something that Lauren spoke to you about. But yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. And how do you think, I suppose, the move to Big Yellow Jacket has gone generally? Like, obviously, like when you kind of shift direction, there's, I suppose there's risk there, right? Because you've got people who, obviously, yeah, and I don't mean this in any derogatory sense, but like you're not like the biggest musician in the world, right? But there's always still like that risk there of alienating like people who would have heard you before, and right, and gone to your gigs and things like that. So there is risk there of completely changing your sound, and I'll come back to talking about gigging in a minute because I saw one of your shorts on your YouTube channel that was really cool. But has the transition gone well for you? I mean, I know that there has been a bit of like media attention as well, right? Around like Hot Press and what is it, FMC, IMRO, right? Have kind of spoken very highly about you. So how has it been for you?
I suppose the transition went well, I suppose. I wasn't paying too much attention. Like, it was nice. It's nice to kind of get the articles and kind of and people pushing your stuff. But I suppose the main struggle is kind of gigs and stuff, I suppose, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But the community as itself, haven't really noticed any kind of drop offs or anything like that. Nice. If anything, they're kind of going, oh, that's a bit of an interesting change there. Nice. I suppose you kind of alienate maybe a little bit of an older audience, kind of like who would have like preferred this folk stuff.
Yeah.
But it's kind of brought in kind of people more in the age demographic that you'd be kind of hoping for.
Okay. So like that younger, that longer listen span, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. And I suppose in terms of, because you've gotten some radio play as well, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So like the fact that you put so much time and effort into the production side of things really helps that, right? Because I know that anytime that I've kind of like submitted anything that I've done, like even though I've like my mixes are pretty good, right, is what I'll say. The only thing that I will say is that, I always put my vocal a little bit too low in the mix, and then people always call it out, and then I go, well, I'll up it next time, and then I up it again. They're like, oh, it could have been a little higher, and I was like, how high do you want it in the mix, right?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to mix your own voice though, because you're kind of like, oh, this is about enough of me as I want to hear.
Very much so, yeah, but yeah, that's what happens, right? And then I get it mastered, and then I sent it off to a few people, and they were like, listen, it's not to the standard, right? In terms of production. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's not as clean. It's a bit more rugged, a bit more rustic, right? Than what is on the radio. Fair enough, right? But the standard that you produce to is very, very high, right? Like it's very clean, right? Which is exactly what you want, presumably, for pop, right? For that style of music, electronic pop. So that's really, really helpful in terms of getting the airplay, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I suppose. Like the first two singles that I released weren't produced by me. For Big Yellow Jacket, they were produced by Cian Sweeney, in Cork, and I went down and spent the kind of 2 days with him on each song, or a day on each song, and I learned so much off him. He's also a lecturer, I think, in MTU.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on music
Munster
production.
Technological University, that the one?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I learned so much about kind of just even kind of EQing a bass properly off him. And so it made a huge difference to how I approached the next few songs and such, and to be able to kind of even try get close to his or the standard that he was producing at.
Yeah, I was talking to someone recently about EQing, and very similar, right? That going through the process of like sending something off to be mastered, right, and getting notes back from the guy who was doing the mastering, going, listen, I can master this, but I don't think I should in its current state, right? And me going, okay, grand. He goes, here's what you can do to get it to a level that I can master it, right? And I was like, okay, grand. And he was like, okay, cool, you're fine with it. That's fantastic, because bands have sent me stuff before and they have not dealt with that feedback very well. And I was like, no, it's grand. It's grand. I know I'm not, like, I'm a bedroom recording artist, right? Like, I know that I don't record to the highest standard in the world. I wouldn't expect to, right? So any kind of tips that he can give me is fine. So he told me, like, cut these frequencies because you're not going to use them. No one's going to hear them anyway, right? Boost this, drop this, right? Do all these things. And it was a wonderful learning experience. I don't think that, and I think that people kind of underestimate just how much effort there is in that side of music, right? Because it's like, go into a studio, put your tracks down, off you go, right? That's it, right? Dunzo. Stick it in the can, release it, off you go. But to do it right, it takes so much more effort and so much more expertise that even if you have like a little bit of knowledge, you can kind of help yourself out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that only comes with working with other people, most of the time, right? Obviously, you've done the Ableton course, so you probably have a lot more knowledge. But what I will say as well is that I always thought that like your music that you produced at home was also to quite a high standard. So like as Mulcahy, sorry, was to quite a high standard. Did you, I suppose, do you use similar kit, right, for your current stuff as Big Yellow Jacket as you used as Mulcahy, or did you kind of go out and get like a bunch of other stuff or new stuff that was needed, like aside from synths and things like that?
Yeah.
Because music isn't a cheap business, I suppose.
No, I got one of these bad boys.
Cool. What is this?
This is an OP1, Teenage Engineering OP1, and so it's basically a recording. It's like a studio in a keyboard. It has drum kits, synths, sequencers, samplers, and it's very good for kind of bouncing ideas when you're not at your computer.
Oh, right, okay.
But it has a lovely array of sound. It has a really cool bass on it that I use. And there's that. I'm mad for plugins.
Everyone is. As soon as you start to talk plugins, everyone will be like, "Oh, tell me more."
Oh, and the worst thing in the world that was ever introduced was subscription plugins.
Oh man.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm surrounded by loads of different stuff here. And then my brother has my electric drum kit thingy in his room at the moment.
Oh, a V kit, is it?
And it is a synth drum pad.
Okay. So it's not like a full V kit. It's kind of like one or two pads, is it?
Yeah, so it's six kind of pads, and
Okay.
you can assign them kind of different things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a Korg or it's a Nord something, but
Okay.
it's very, very good.
Nice. Nice. And is that stuff that you would have picked up like over time, or was that like, oh well, I'm in now, so I'm just going to like get everything, and this will do me for the next while?
And so it was something that um I didn't know. Most of the stuff I bought before I knew how to use them. I just like the look
Yeah,
of
yeah,
them. I just saw I saw them on YouTube and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
yeah, yeah,
Wait, I was like, my music could really use that.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's a dangerous statement. Yeah,
yeah, and then you get it and you're kind of like, ooh, it's like the mule with the spinning wheel. Lord knows how we got it, and Lord knows if he knows how
yeah.
to
What
use it.
did I do? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I always thought that with launch pads, right, when they were first on the scene, I was like, oh, that looks class. I would use that and play the shit out of that, right?
Yeah.
But if I know as well that if I got it, I wouldn't do a tap with it. I would like look at it and go, oh, I'm really glad that I have this.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the next thing, shall we? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I first got the OP1. I was like,
Oh, really?
I was like, this is the coolest thing on the market. And I was like, I should really learn how to use
Learn
it.
how to use it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I suppose back to YouTube, try and figure out how this thing works. Yeah, yeah. But then as well, I suppose because you have that kit, um, is that kit integral to? And look, this is coming from a place of pure ignorance because I've never played with anyone who's played electronic music, right? Or I think there was one band I played one or two gigs with that integrated it into the set, and they basically just like ran audio through like a MacBook or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But is that stuff integral to playing a gig live, or is it just a matter of you have your backing tracks somewhat, or what's what's the performative element? I suppose is the question.
It's good. Another good question. It's ever shifting at this moment.
Okay.
So at first I tried to kind of incorporate the instruments themselves
Mm-hmm.
and kind of live loop things.
Right. Gotcha.
That didn't go so well.
Okay.
So then I
Can I dig into that a little bit? Right. What did, like what happened? Like was it just that there was too much dead time, right? Trying to loop things.
there's that, and there's
Okay.
also my limitations as a drummer in a live performance
Okay.
without being able to kind of go onto my laptop and click and drag and kind of cut things that are out of time and drag them into
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha.
And yeah, so I quickly learned that one wasn't for me.
Okay.
And then I kind of stems were the next one and kind of triggers kind of I'd load
Okay.
different parts of the song into um different groups in Ableton or different kind of what are they called?
This
Um
was your short, was it? On at Big Yellow
yeah,
Jacket on YouTube.
yeah.
And so what I have here in front of me on my screen is how I'm going to play it. And so we have our basic
And you could kind of trigger them live. And like the short I thought was pretty well because you're sitting in your home, you're comfortable,
Mm.
you're not as anxious as you would be live. And then I went and tried to do it live. Um I was really anxious. I kept mistriggering.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I think the set was cut short because of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was a bit embarrassing. Um,
Listen, everyone has embarrassing gigs, right?
yeah,
That's just part of it, right? That's the baptism of fire that everyone goes through at some stage, right? And look, you were trying something new, right?
Yeah.
So anything since then?
Actually, nothing since that last one where it kind of got cut short.
Okay.
But I haven't really tried. I've kind of gone back in to kind of work on more music,
Right.
and then try figure out how I'm going to approach this live now.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking more. I'm probably going to see if one of my DJ friends will want to DJ it.
I was gonna say, have you thought about getting someone else involved?
Yeah. Yeah. Like originally, I think I wanted something like the XX.
Yes. Okay.
With someone kind of who's actually good at kind of DJing stuff and kind of just work out the backing tracks and the stems and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be very happy to kind of just layer bass or guitar over it in a live setting.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, that would be sick. But I think it is important, I suppose, to have that plan, right? Because obviously, like you did plan out the other gigs that you did, and they just didn't like go according to the plan, right?
Yeah.
But it's brave, like it's courageous to do that, you know. And yeah, like hats off to you, right, for trying something different and for trying it in a live setting and going, you know what, that didn't quite work, but let's give it another go, you know.
Yeah. It's that fine line between bravery and stupidity. And I love to like straddle it.
yeah. That's it though. I mean, everyone does that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone who's involved or anyone who is trying to pursue something that they love, right?
Yeah.
Has to do that in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
Something has to be on the line, and sometimes it's your pride, you know.
Yeah.
But,
I figure if you're going to do something you love, you're probably going to fall down more times than you're going to succeed in the beginning. So you're just going to have to keep pushing through. It depends how much you really want it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And in terms of the pushing through, have you found that there's like a lot of hustling, right? To kind of, I suppose, find your niche and find your audience somewhat, right? And to kind of get a bit of attention. Like, is there an awful lot of that hustle culture involved here?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of that culture we on social media these days is trying to find your target audience through posts and such. I've never been the most active on social media.
Yeah.
I'd find it hard to put time out of my day to kind of do it as well. Kind of even just to create content, even if it's just putting a picture of me reacting to something with my music playing in the background.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't own a phone that's good enough for it.
Right.
So it's hard in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
When you go out and play gigs and stuff, even if I bring like the acoustic guitar and play my songs acoustically, and someone goes, "Oh, I really like that song," you're like, "Yeah, it's Big Yellow Jacket, yeah." And it's hard to get them to retain that information.
Yeah.
To bring home and look at later.
Yeah, it is. Because, I mean, obviously when someone's out, they're probably not in the, I suppose, the most pristine state of mind, I suppose, right, for remembering things, right? It is a challenge to get a foothold, even if you're doing things the traditional way, I suppose, right? You're going to need to like blow people's socks off, right, in order to get them to remember you, right?
Yeah.
It's a challenge in and of itself. Yeah. Going back to the songwriting idea, how has songwriting changed between Mulcahy and Big Yellow Jacket, right? The way that I kind of write songs is I noodle around on my guitar for a while, and I come across something and I go, "Oh, let's travel with this a little bit. Let's see where this leads me," right? And then after I've come up with like a riff or two, then I'm like, "Okay, grand. Let's pursue this a little bit more. Maybe tack on an intro. Start thinking about how does this particular piece of music make me feel, and then I write lyrics around that feel, right?" Was that similar to how you did things with Mulcahy? And
Yeah.
is that still how you do things with Big Yellow Jacket? It's just the instrument has changed.
Yeah, so I started pretty much the same on guitar,
Mm.
and with Mulcahy, just kind of noodle around, kind of figure out what sounds nice. Do I have a lyric or a melody in mind? And now it's more so I sit down and I kind of like I started one during the week, and I just started by kind of singing a C note,
Right.
and then just warping it into kind of like a pattern, where it doesn't sound like itself anymore, and then
Mm.
you kind of listen and you kind of go, oh, okay, I'll build on that. And you build on that, you build on that, you build on that. And then you kind of get your melody in your head as you're going.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you have kind of a whole song musically, a melody in your head, and you're still trying to figure out the lyrics.
Yeah. And then you have to kind of go back and go, okay, where do I fit this in? Right. Even if you have an idea as to what lyric you're going to put in, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
where does this go? Where do I cut? Right.
yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
even at that, sometimes you get like this. You have like these three words that are ringing around your head for like a part of the song, and it's kind of like, okay, you can put that in. You'll
Yeah.
format it down so it sounds kind of a little bit strange, and
Mhm.
you're like, how do I write the song that it's thematically with these three words that you've now cornered yourself with?
Yes, that happens. Right. And sometimes I'm kind of like, I really want to use this phrase, but am I just shoehorning it in here? Right? Like, does it suit the song? Does it do what I need it to do here? Should I just save it and hope that I come up with something else later? Then 9 times out of 10, I go, nah, I'm shoehorning it in. It's going
I
in
just should.
there, you know?
No one's going to notice.
Yeah, I'm just gonna shove it in there. It's fine. It's fine. Just gonna put this square peg in this round hole. It's absolutely
Yeah.
fine.
Well, when's the last time someone's come up and go, "What's this line doing in the song? Did you just shoehorn this song?"
Yeah, true. Um, but sometimes it can feel a little bit jarring, um,
Yeah.
if the theme isn't like pretty consistent throughout.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's pretty much right. On song for anytime you write a song or you kind of do anything,
mm,
you'd listen to a part and you kind of go, "Ooh, I could have said that or sang that better."
yeah.
And then it's just every time that song plays, you're listening to it, and everyone's kind of going, "Oh, I like that song." And you're kind of going, oh, "I had
All
better words."
all you hear is the mistakes and the I
Yeah,
should have's, right? And
yeah,
what ifs, you know.
yeah.
Uh,
If only you could hear your songs for the first time in their finished
yeah,
form.
yeah, yeah. If I could, there's some I wouldn't write.
Me too.
Yeah.
I go, "Oh,
But
that's a mistake."
but what I will say though is that you are remarkably prolific in terms of your songwriting. Like this year, you've released what 6 tracks
Yeah,
on Spotify, amongst other. There are other sources for music available, but 6 tracks that seems like a lot of work, and the year isn't even out yet, right?
yeah. I'm feeling a little bit of burnout at the moment,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, so I'm kind of just starting to kind of have. I say feeling a little bit of a burnout. I started writing a song. I had one kind of finished, almost finished production wise,
Mm.
and then I was like, oh, I'm not writing lyrics for this at the moment because I just feel a little this this lyrical burnout.
Yeah.
And so like 6 demos later, I'm still kind of like, maybe I'll just turn this into an album or something. Maybe without lyrics because I still don't have any lyrics. Any of them.
I mean, look, that's the beauty, I suppose, of electronic pop as well, is that you don't have to have lyrics necessarily, and the music can kind of speak for itself.
Yeah.
Although you do tend, and look, this is just something I noticed, is tend to use a lot of backing vocals to, and correct me if I'm completely wrong on this, right? But what I've kind of noticed is that you do tend to use a lot of layers of vocals and then turn them into instruments in and of themselves as well. Which, of course, doesn't need lyrics necessarily to be able to do that. But I suppose it's one thing worth considering, in terms of your burnout. Maybe that's lyrical burnout. Maybe that's something that might contribute to that then as well, in some
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah. I suppose in the song production, I love texture. Like a huge fan of massively textured songs. And so I figured just if I can throw a couple of different effects on a voice, stretched out, and lower it, it just adds a different element to the song and
Yeah.
kind of adds something a little bit different, maybe even kind of to kind of maybe even how a line is delivered in a song.
And this, I suppose, brings me neatly onto Silhouette, actually. That there is quite a bit of, I suppose, voice modulation on some of the vocal lines there, and then slightly lower on the mix, there's kind of like this very distorted, very bassy kind of voice that repeats the line underneath it, which is a really, really nice touch.
I love it, but I hate it, and I think it's overrated. What were we crying for? I fear I've lost control. I feel it in my bones. The words let loose on those I know. I'll never let it go. I am the pain I show. A silhouette of love gone cold.
You know, if you listen to, I suppose, any of my podcasty stuff, I'll talk about like layering vocals is like a skill in and of itself. And like the voice is, and the backing vocals are another instrument that are greatly overlooked in terms of music and music appreciation, in my opinion. But yes, Silhouette. It was Silhouette, I suppose, the beginning of. Well, I suppose Silhouette came out in 2022, was it?
Yeah.
2022.
It was May 22.
May 22. So
yeah,
halfway through 2022, you released your debut single, Silhouette. Your debut.
Yeah.
And that same year, you released a second track. What was it called? Apologies.
Longing, Living, Loving.
Longing, Living, Loving.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of the forgotten single.
Really?
Yeah. Well, even in my view, like it came on in the car the other day on my Spotify, and I went, "Oh yeah,
I forgot I released that." Yeah.
It's the middle child.
That's the middle child.
You keep changing in the best of ways. Rose tinted and I stay the same. The world seems to fade away. It's everything I want. I know you. I know you. I know you wait forever and a day. I know you. I know.
But that's still 2 tracks in 6 months ish, right?
Yeah.
That's so much work, right? So was that, I suppose, the beginning of the burnout, I suppose, in some capacities, right? Was that the beginning of, I suppose, this is what I'm going to pursue for a while, and I'm just going to keep at it and keep pushing at it until your body just goes, you know what, I can't do this anymore for now. You need to take a break. Do you think it was, I suppose, a bit over exuberant, like a bit over enthusiastic, and now you're just kind of like feeling the impact of it?
Not really sure. I think what happened was those 2 songs were kind of done within that 6 months, and then I think it was another 3 months. Or it was another. I think one came out. Then the other one came out in July, and then I did a cover of Heavenly Father in October.
Oh, yeah.
So Cian had produced the first 2.
Yes.
And so there was no real. I'd sent him demos and stuff, and he had taken kind of some of my stems and stuff like that, and then built the song upon those. And I saw him do that, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool! I want to do that too." So then I made Heavenly Father because I was like, "What better way to start than doing a cover and start producing, because it's already a song that's there. You don't have to do much. You just have to make it in a way that you want to do it."
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I was like, "Okay, that was cool. That was very enjoyable." So then I did Real, and I was like, "Okay." And at the same time as Real was going on, Confetti was already done.
All
but
right.
but I liked real better, so or I liked real more. So I put real first, and then put confetti afterwards, and then so on. And all this time while we're in this kind of, a song would be uploaded to DistroKid, and it'd be for
Yeah.
6 weeks out. In that 6 week time, I'd be able to write and produce another song. Kind of, I would just challenge myself to get up in the morning and just dabble away until something kind of works.
Mm.
And then I do it that way. I could write then afterwards, kind of hoping that the song will tell me what it wants to be about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a, like, when you say that as a sentence, it sounds a bit weird.
Yeah, completely weird.
Right. But
I felt a bit Charlie Puthi there for a second.
you feel that? I like a number of years ago, like I made a tweet about songwriting, and I think it was around the time that I kind of got back into gigging and writing music again, although I don't think I ever really stopped writing. But I talked about how, you know, songs are just out in the ether, right? And it's just a matter of, you know, humans being attuned to that particular song to just like reach out and grab it and pull it down and go, oh, this is the song that I want to create. But it was already there. You just happened to be the one that was attuned to it. So, you know, don't worry, I'm perfectly capable of making the Charlie Puthi statements about music myself, you know.
Oh, very good.
How are you feeling now? Right. Like, when did you start to feel this element of burnout, I suppose?
Probably in August, right before the last one came out. All My Friends came out, and I think there was such a burnout moment. I was kind of a little deflated from the previous one, Fool. I was a little deflated that it didn't get as much attention as I thought it would, and because I was really proud of it. And of course, like you bring your shining product out and nobody looks at it, and you're kind of like, oh. And this other song was already kind of in the DistroKid kind of waiting line.
Right.
And so I barely promoted All My Friends, in just a kind of state of, I don't know if I want to go through this just at this moment in time.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to let it go out. And then I was listening to All My Friends in the car the other day, and I went, I really like this song.
It is a good song. It's a really good song.
Where are your friends tonight? All my friends, all my friends, all my. Where are your friends tonight?
They're all really good, right? Is the thing, right? There's not one of them that's a stinker, right? Which, in addition to being prolific, is a massive achievement in and of itself as well, right? Because, like, when it comes to people who release songs pretty consistently, and I said this earlier on tonight on another video that I was making, that if you look at like the Red Hot Chili Peppers releasing the double album Stadium Arcadium, right? They should have just taken the best songs off of both of those CDs and put them onto one CD and released that, and that would have been a great record, right? Because they didn't have enough. Talent is the wrong word. They didn't have enough, I suppose, creative energy right there to be able to generate 2 albums worth at the same time, right? It simply wasn't the case, right? So maybe an extended record, if that's what they wanted to do, release that. That would have been fantastic. But in your case here, you've released 8 songs in the space of a year and 4 months, 5 months, a year and 5 months.
Yeah.
And you've basically released an album's worth in 16 months, right? And not one of them is a stinker. That's an amazing achievement.
Thank you.
That's incredible, you know? So as much as, you know, some of them might not have gotten as much attention as others, yes, it's a bummer, right? And it's a bit of a downer in and of that moment. But at the end of the day, you're doing what you want. You're releasing your music, and, you know, if people listen to it, great. If they don't, but they're missing out, right? Because as I say, they're all quality.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I think I do I remind myself of that every now and then. It's kind of like, I probably don't have the biggest push, algorithmically speaking.
Yeah.
I don't make the largest effort on social media, so what can I really expect?
Yeah.
And then I just remind myself, I enjoy doing this. So I'm doing it for me and whoever wants to listen, or
Love
whoever.
the game.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you just do it for that and a small few, I suppose.
Well, count me among them. All right. In terms of how you're going to, I suppose, tackle this again, when do you think you might get back to it? And this isn't me kind of going like, oh, you're really good at music, you should continue to make music, right? When you are in a situation in which you shouldn't be making music because you have burnt yourself out from it, right? And you're not going to be in your best creative place in the world, right? Full disclosure, I've been burnt out myself, right, in terms of my career before, right? And like, I got massively depressed, right? I had myself a little bit of a breakdown and things like that, right? Big fan of mental health. If you're having problems, speak to someone. That's not necessarily for you, Zach. That's for anyone who's watching this. But
100% agree.
But what do you think you need to do, I suppose, to get past this? I suppose to learn from it so that either it doesn't happen again or you can kind of mitigate it, so that you can get back to doing what you enjoy and what you love.
I suppose I've given myself a little bit of time away from kind of the laptop and looking at screens. I've kind of found other things to kind of do to distract myself, and kind of other things to think about. And yeah, just give yourself a little bit of time and just come back when it's right for you.
Yeah.
That's all you can really do, really. You shouldn't really force yourself into it. You'll just stress yourself out a little bit more.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Like I found that when I had my kind of issues, I changed my role, right, in terms of work to like a lower stress situation. So it was all a bit too much, right, frankly. To the point at which like my stress manifested itself in physical ways and things like that. But yeah, by changing that, all of my physical issues kind of went away, and that's incredible, right? Like the idea that stress can have such an impact on your day to day and your life in general, that it's a thing that people don't think about, right? That it's just stress. You're just a bit stressed out. You'll be fine, right? Yeah. That's not how, like, as the body, or as the book is titled, the body keeps the score, right? Of what your issues are over time. But yeah, I just have one or two last things to ask you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Like going back to before Mulcahy, right? And I suppose obviously like music is obviously it's something that you want to pursue in general, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
But when did you start, right? When did you start making music? Or I suppose learning music, and what was it about music that kind of drew you in and created this love?
I suppose I've played bass since I think 10 years old.
Oh,
maybe,
right.
maybe a little bit older. I remember like we used to listen to like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses, and I learned bass because I wanted to play like Iron Maiden songs. So naturally, when I went into secondary school and I started playing music, and I brought my bass with me to music class, one of my friends had a bass as well, and he loved Red Hot Chili Peppers, so he was able to do all this funk
All the
slapping stuff.
slaps.
And then he was like, "Show me what you could do," and I went, "Oh."
I can gallop. I can gallop. Yeah.
Look at me, I can play Run to the Hills.
Yeah. Hey, that Run to the Hills is a great song.
That's great. It's a great song.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then from there I was in bands kind of up until I was about 19. And then kind of there was a band we were in as teenagers. We gigged a lot. And then I found myself a little burned out from that. So I stepped away, took a little bit of time off, and I didn't come back to music till I was 26.
Right.
And that's when Mulcahy started.
Right. Very good. And how long, I suppose, from start to finish? Well, finish? Question mark. Did Mulcahy last? As a project?
Probably. So I had the songs there from probably about 26 they didn't get recorded till about 28.
Hmm.
And then the EP came out in 2020, I think. And that's
Yeah,
when I
think that's
changed
right.
direction.
Yeah.
So it would have been about 29, 28, 28 when that EP came out. So
Right.
it lasted about 3 years of folk music.
That's pretty good. Like for any kind of like musical endeavor to last, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's interesting that your school had 2 bass players in it, though, is what I'm going to say. It wouldn't be common,
Yeah.
I suppose, for many schools in Ireland in general, I suppose. Forgive me, this is coming from a place in ignorance. Because I'm from rural Ireland originally, right?
Yeah.
So it's rare enough that you'd have any musicians, never mind bass players, right? So it's kind of funny in that regard. Certainly no bass players that played Iron Maiden. You know.
Yeah. I think I was the only one that played Iron Maiden.
Oh, really? Yeah.
In the school, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good crack, because I was the only musician, I think, in our school in general, because we didn't have a music class in our school as well. We were too poor for it. No word of a lie, that sounds like an exaggeration, but that's actually the case. We were too poor to have.
Oh no, like I'd believe if rural Ireland is an old different beast.
Yeah, I have opinions on this, but maybe I'll save it for a rant as a video or something at some stage. But anyway, yeah, I think that's everything that I kind of wanted to ask you. Apart from what's next for Big Yellow Jacket? Obviously, you're taking some time off from Big Yellow Jacket for a little while. But when you come back, I suppose, do you have anything that you want to achieve, like in general, with Big Yellow Jacket? What's the end goal?
Suppose I'm just going to try keep evolving the music.
Yeah.
I just want to keep trying to make interesting music. So I think that's the only goal that I really have in mind. I'm not really driven. I don't think I was never really driven by targets or anything like that. Monthly listeners, I mean, it's a nice commodity to have, but I find I think that's really what causes the stress and the burnout in the first place, is just keeping an eye on your numbers.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be just a reference. And do you ever see how numbers focused and how weird it is in, say, the series The Boys?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to end up like that.
Or what was it, the Black Mirror episode? Have you seen that show?
Yeah, it's the rating one.
Yes. Yeah.
Can't
remember the name of that episode anyway.
Or
But
Community,
yes,
with the Meow Meow Beans.
with the Meow Meow Beans. Yeah.
So I think
I love those apples.
Right him!
Okay, but that's low.
Yeah. So I think I'm just going to keep trying to evolve the music, kind of see where it goes, kind of, and that's about it.
That's fair. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, as you say, like, yeah, I think that if you want to really kind of like get beyond that, right, and get to loftier goals of like awards and things like that, right, which again, I think that your music is very well produced and very well put together. Like I think I don't think it would be too much of an ambition to want to any of that kind of stuff, right? But
yeah, well, I think if that kind of stuff happens, it's just gravy.
It's nice
at this point.
Yeah.
And what I really want is to put together a proper gig where I don't stress out.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you say, I think you have a good plan in place for that, right? Like, get a DJ, right? Who will handle a lot of the stuff for you, so that you can, as we were talking about earlier, focus on the performative elements of that.
Yeah.
Because for me, playing live is it's all about the performance, right? Like when I was a young lad, I was about 19. Being 19 and full of beans. I was playing a gig one night, and the guy who taught me to play guitar was playing at the same gig, and like we were up second or third or whatever, and then like they were like a headlining act or something. And after he had played his set, I was outside and he was outside chatting away, and I was chatting to him or I kind of went up to him and started to chat away to him a little bit. And I said to him, "Come here, like playing the guitar, like you're great, but like, would you not like, get into it a little bit? Like, would you not perform a bit for the crowd?" And he's like, "Some people think that playing the instrument well is performance." And I was like, "Yeah, but like, it's not like Kiss, you know."
Yeah. So Jack Black in School of Rock, you have to get the
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like, yes, I can appreciate like someone who performs the instrument well, right?
yeah,
But at the same time, it's not necessarily the most entertaining thing in the world, right?
yeah,
Like I like to be entertained by a show, right? That's why
yeah.
it's called a show, right? I want to go to a show and be entertained.
Yeah. But you nearly want to see the musician having a good time playing while they're doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're
You want
too
them to
busy
enjoy it as much as you're enjoying them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if they're too busy, focusing on being perfect, then I find it difficult to believe that there's enjoyment in that.
Yeah.
Probably more of a stressor. As I'm sure you've experienced yourself, certainly with your last couple of gigs, as you mentioned.
Oh yeah.
Before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to plug, Zach or Mr. Jacket, whatever you?
I suppose just all my music.
All your music? That's perfect.
Yeah, so yeah, well, I mean, if you want to follow me on Instagram, Spotify, that'd be lovely. I suppose that's
Okay.
gravy too. Come along for the journey.
Great.
Be nice.
Hopefully, as my stuff grows, your socials will grow with it as well. That would be fantastic. If anyone who is watching this
Lovely,
goes and
yeah.
follows Zach, that would be fantastic. And be sure to keep an eye out for Big Yellow Jacket and follow. Is that what people do on Spotify or on other things? Do they follow or do they like?
Ooh,
Let's see.
I think you can like and follow.
You follow, and you can like. Yes. So people should go and do that.
Yeah,
for,
both.
for Zach stuff.
Add me to lots of playlists as well if you can. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah, that's really good for an algorithm. That's really
Yeah.
good for the Spotify algorithm. Gets you stuck on playlists and stuff like that. Do that for me as well while you're there. That would be great. But yes, thank you very much for your time, Zach. I really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to chat to me. It's been lovely chatting to you.
And thanks for having me, and thanks for all the kind words about the music. I really appreciate it.
I wouldn't say it if it weren't true. All right. But yeah, have yourself a lovely evening, and hopefully I'll be listening to more Big Yellow Jacket soon.